Hello, my name is Eleanor O'Keefe. I'm the editorial director of CogX, and it is my great pleasure to be introducing the next session of our Createch Cog Extra. So Createch looks at where the creative industries and tech come together. We've had some extraordinary sessions already this morning, and particularly one investigating new revenue streams for digital models that large organizations are embracing. It was a highly uplifting session, and I hope that we will get to some of the same efforts and innovation in our next session. So we're going to be looking at ears, eyes, and minds, the future of music. The music industry has been very hard hit by lockdown and social distancing measures. With music venues closed or significantly reduced in their capacity, it may be quite a while before we can find ourselves getting lost in the crowd of ecstatic concert goers. But does that mean that we lose our music entirely? How can we get that ecstasy back? And how can we support young musicians who are building their careers? Tech, obviously, is the answer. It is a great pleasure to be handing over to our chair of this session, who is Patrick Campbell. Patrick is the founder of PatCam, and he is also the MD of MOBO organization. He's taken a break from an insanely busy schedule producing the MOBO Awards and from all of his amazing consulting work. So we're so grateful that he could join us. Patrick, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi.
Thanks, Eleanor.
Thank you. Over to you.
Great. We've got a fantastic session planned. Ears, eyes, and minds, the future of music. And to discuss that, we've got three really smart people that each have a different perspective on the theme. We have Isabel Garvey, who's the MD of Abbey Road Studios. Abbey Road needs no introduction, but we'll kind of dive into that. We have Roman Rapek, who's the founder of Overview Arc, which is an incredible tech, creative community / movement, which Roman will be telling us about. And kind of really excitingly, we also have Becca. Becca is an artist that's gone on an incredible trajectory over the last kind of 5 or 6 months, and she's gone from not being signed to being signed. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a conversation. So I want us to have a nice chat about some of the issues. Look, just so we start nice and easy, how have things been for you during lockdown, especially as it relates to kind of what you do and your identity as what you do? So kind of, Isabel, let me start by you, and we'll come to Becca last.
Okay. So just how lockdown was in general is your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were chatting in the green room just now. It's been very strange times. Professionally, Abbey Road, closed for the first time since 1931. We didn't even close for a Second World War, right? So closing those doors and shutting down was a very strange moment. And if you think about it, we're in the business of making music, so it's not just my staff, but artists, musicians, everyone was keen to kind of get back, and music is so important to everyone, and particularly in this kind of challenging time. So I spent a lot of time then trying to get the studio back open with the social distancing measures in place, which we did in June. So we have been operating now for 4 or 5 months, and it's just brilliant to be back in the studio. We have all of the social distancing measures, but the control rooms and the live rooms feel the same, and there's still a huge amount of creativity. In fact, a lot of the artists and musicians that come in say their time in lockdown has been an incredibly creative moment for them, and they have huge bodies of work that they want to record and put down. So it's kind of been highs and lows, I guess, and I'm immensely proud of what the team have done here to get us back open so quickly for all of the creatives out there. And then just on a personal level, it has been a Corona coaster, challenging and some, some really good moments, some really kind of life affirming moments where you get closer to, I think you were saying, Patrick, in the green room, even your neighbors on your street that you haven't known for that long. So it's been good and bad.
I understand. Roman, how's it been for you?
Well, I can definitely sympathise with the idea of a Corona coaster, especially as we were before lockdown. We were putting on virtual shows, and we were testing things out that were kind of outside the norm of what a normal concert would be, and then normal concerts disappeared. So, in some ways, we kind of the thing that we'd already started to evolve took on a life of its own. And this idea of even the way we're having this talk is that people use technology in a completely different way to the way they used it 6 months ago. And I think that people are a lot more comfortable with it. And because of the things that used to be alienating are now our only means of communication. So I think that mostly we've become a more tech literate or technology has become more humanized. And
sure.
that's kind of where I think that's where music is always going to be the most interesting kind of zeitgeist to show where culture's going and where technology's going. So you got things that were being done in music where people were collaborating online, people were sending each other gems back and forth. That was happening decades ago. And then all of a sudden, every aspect of life took on the same kind of mode. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see how things have changed.
Sure. So Becca, how's lockdown been for you? Once we go around and just talk about our lockdown experiences, we're going to cycle back around, and I'm going to give everybody kind of 60 seconds just to tell us about Abbey Road. Roman, I want you to tell us about Overview Arc and tell us a little bit about your music, and then Becca, we'll come back around to you, and we'll show your clip. But before we do that, just tell us about how it's been for you.
Yeah, I think hearing what everyone else has said, I've had such a similar experience. I think for me, after having been on a world tour for the past 2 years, being in one place was a completely new thing for me. But it's been an incredibly profound time. I think as an artist, having real stillness and also only having myself and who I live with has really just allowed for me to hone in on the who I am, what I am, what I want to create. I think also there's something about getting to the end of your day, and I don't know if any of you felt this, but there really was a sense of your feelings, your emotions, your experiences coming to the surface because you are still. And so I think having the luxury of time to go to sleep and know that you have the cocoon of safety, maybe that's your home or your very strict regime that you have, to really explore those things that are going on within you. I found it a very refining time. But yeah, I mean, I'll save it more when we go back round, but it's just been incredibly profound to go from the start to now, really. Yeah, profound would be the word.
Very, very profound times. So Abbey Road, as we can see behind you, Isabel.
I'm on brand.
You are on brand, and it's truly one of the great brands. To get a music brand, it's a great brand that has an incredible legacy. How do you take a legacy brand and keep it relevant?
Very carefully. So I've been here 5 years, and it's kind of been my mission in this role to take, this amazing kind of culture and brand beyond Northwest London, but that's done very delicately. I often talk about walking a tightrope between heritage and the future. So my role going in, or my role still is, how do we make sure that the studio, where we turn 90 next year, is relevant for the next 90 years? But to answer your question more directly, we started with our core business, which is recorded music and recording music. And we built some new studios straight away that are kind of just smaller and slightly more approachable because, as I'm sure Becca will tell you, if you have a really good creative experience somewhere as an artist, you tend to go back. So we need to kind of build up the next generation of artists coming through. But I think what's kind of more pertinent to this discussion, without giving you long history of all of the change at Abbey Road is, in looking at the future, we know that we need to be digitally relevant in terms of having services before you come to the studios and after, because the way people prepare and produce music is changing. We still fundamentally believe people want to come to inspirational places and record, but how can we be relevant outside of that? And so 5 years ago, we set up a music technology incubator, in fact, the first in Europe, to sponsor small businesses that are looking to get into the music business and really help them accelerate their growth. And in doing so, then we get that proximity to where technology is, where it's going to take the music industry, and kind of be part of the change rather than have the change happen, and take that energy that the music industry has around innovation and really kind of push it back into startups and give them the platform they need to be really successful. So we'll get into it later, but we've seen some brilliant technology.
Absolutely. I realized when I knew that you were going to be on the panel and I was going to be chairing it, I dug out a picture from when I was young and slim without the whole COVID belly thing. So probably
check you out.
Work it.
Yeah, that was me about 20 years ago.
When we did. Goodness. Yeah, Studio One still looks the same.
Yeah. Harry, do you want to flick to the other images? Yeah, and there's a kind of reverence that you have walking into the space that I guess is really inspirational, but also can be somewhat of a barrier to people thinking that Abbey Road is for them. But yeah, we'll kind of dig into that, and I'll get over my anxiety about putting on a couple of stone during lockdown. Roman, I know that you have some images. Would you like to share those with us before you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, if Harry can put some of those images in, I guess that would be the best way of describing what we've been building. So the aim was to take all this exciting new technology and all these new tools. This is also, I should point out, pre-COVID, and try and say, well, the format of a concert's been the same for the history of the music industry, and the music industry itself, in terms of the mechanism of how records are made and release cycles and singles and radio singles, they've stayed the same, but the way we consume music and the way we make music, all of that's completely changed. Streaming, for instance, the way you interact with music. So it was to use all these new bits of technology. So building a tool that was a live VR AR rig where the audience was able to view the event through cameras on VR headsets, but also that we were able to switch them between reality and which is the concert, and the most up-to-date futuristic technology that you could have. Because I think that all art is, this idea that immersive as a buzzword, good art is immersive. You're transported into by even a good photo or a good book or anything. So the aim was to try and see if we could use this technology rather than it just being a kind of a gimmick, whether we could take something that's already incredibly powerful, which is live music and the relationship between an audience and the performer, and if we could augment it using these new tools. And it kind of went and took this really interesting path, because as soon as you're bringing things like game design or kind of community-based user design into something, it kind of takes on this new format and this new form, and things that worked at a live concert still worked in these new virtual concerts. And then it kind of fast forward to now, when we were building alongside this thing, because these were obviously events you would go to physically, but it was a concert that was happening within a headset at the same time, so a concurrent real world and virtual world event. And at the time, which was a couple of years back, it was kind of a strange art experiment, if in a sort of most cynical sense. And then we wrote an album around this idea of, well, what kind of music would work with this? Because the music that works, music is so contextual. Something that works when you're at a live concert is different to what you listen to on a night out. It's different to what you listen to in your car or when you want to relax. Or music has different functions, or we use music in different ways and different moods. And the mood and the tone of the music we were writing for this record completely changed because of the fact that we had this new context we were writing in. And this And then it kind of got us thinking a lot about this idea of, well, why do we think of, there's the old music industry and there's the idea of the classic industry, which I think we were upsetting a lot of people because it was changing, this idea of changing the format. And obviously this is, to bring it to, at the moment, the idea that people were saying virtual concerts, I don't know, would anyone need that? And then COVID happens. But I think that it's interesting to think about the like old guard or the old way of music working, and this idea that we have to almost protect essentially a business model, which I think, for instance, Abbey Road is a good example. Even in the early photos of Abbey Road, there's guys in white coats operating machinery that look like they're sending rockets to the moon. The history of technology has always been the history of music. They've been intertwined. Whether the sample is invented and suddenly you get hip hop and dance culture, the Stratocaster, the electric guitar happens. All these things, these things we think of as a cultural progression of music and genres, is actually just new inventions coming, new modes of expression. Even the music video and things like that there were people who pioneered the use of how can an artist communicate in 3.5 minutes on TV, or even before that in the sort of new pop era. How can you condense your everything into something that's meaningful to someone? So that's right. These new tools are so exciting, but also we're just at the cusp of it. Like the majority of, after flying the flag so much of new tech, etc., the majority of it's terrible because we don't know what we're doing. And it's the same as any movement or era, is this sort of clumsy grappling with these new tools.
Understood. Look, there are so many strands that I need to keep track. Want to keep track of. We definitely want to come back to this whole notion of the kind of the karmic fast forward button that we've been hit with. So we're seeing things that would take years are happening in months, and things that would take months are happening in weeks. And it was interesting that it was these broader set of forces that have made exactly what you do very much at the heart of the conversation. Becca, we've kind of been saving the best till last. Before we hear from you, let's hear from you. So Harry, let's roll the track, and then we'll hear from you.
Be there when you're faded, when the world is left you naked. You know that I'll be there.
Woo. Yeah, it's been such a wild journey for me. I guess a bit of background is, for the past 2 years I've been touring with a UK band called Han, and we've been on the world tour just promoting their album, and part of that was that I also released some music with them, which went really well. I had a track on their album called Crying Over You. We did a session of one of their tracks that went really well, and over the past year I've then been writing my own stuff. And prior to this I was doing kind of work in another band, but then went on to do this, and in the last year I've been writing my own music, which has been such an incredible journey. And I, as you'll know, because you all know about artists, I think having that time to really refine the sound, refine what the wider why is for me, has been just incredible. I think I'm somebody who loves music, but I also love what music does in culture and its place to speak into culture. So for me, the topic of what I was writing about and what it was going to communicate has just been really important. So I've had a bit of that time over the past year to write, and what you just heard there is a track called I'll Be There, which came out on Friday, which is my debut release, which has been very exciting. But I guess when we hit lockdown, the track wasn't mixed, it wasn't mastered, there was no plan. I was kind of working with my manager, but in very loose terms. And I think suddenly having that cosmic halt, as we've said, and that space allowed for some of the conversations I've been having around the brand and how I want that to feel, conversations around getting the track finished, caused me to just be able to bring those conversations into action. And in the last, I guess in this whole period from lockdown till now, I've gone from an unsigned artist who had toured and that was it really, to finding my team. My wider management team was found during lockdown, the people who were like my creative team, and they did like a style guide for me. They've done all the visuals that you'll see and annihilated it. They're wonderful, 161. To then conversations with different labels and working through that, and then finding my home with a label called Lab Records to releasing on Friday. And I think what's been so profound in that experience is how it's happened. We were speaking earlier in the green room about, meeting heads of different labels on Zoom in their home with their, their regular mug of tea. I think has been, it just breaks down those usual human barriers. I think within the industry, there's a real ease about fluffing things up, and we can make things seem very glamorous and very interesting, and it can really take a lot of time to work through, how do I actually feel about working with this person, and does their work culture, work ethic, do their values match with where I want my brand to go? Those things can be really difficult to unpick in person, I think, ironically. But I think suddenly having that barrier of technology has it, as much as we can all relate to the very awkward Zoom moments and pressing the mute button when we're not meant to, which can be very traumatizing. I think there's also been a really incredible side to having no pretense and really only being able to present yourself with a screen to other industry professionals, and have to sell who you are, and what you usually would be able to bring in warmth, you have to bring in conversation. I think that whole process has just been really profound and very interesting. And in honesty, I'm so glad that it's happened this way. I think this way has allowed for real strong international relationships that, had I not had to be Zooming with those people, probably wouldn't have happened, because our diaries are fuller, and we're distracted in different ways with other, artists and other industry people, etc. So we're finding, I think, in a big way.
Okay, let me ask you a really direct question before I come to everybody else. You were recently signed. Can you say who you were signed with? Who?
Yeah, so Lab Records, an indie label called Lab Records.
Right. Would you have been signed if it were not for lockdown, do you think?
I don't think so. I think there's so much dancing that you do with labels. You meet, they schmooze you. You have to wade through so much. So I think, I don't think I would have. I think the process would have taken a lot longer. And I think people's focus would have been much less acute. So I think it would have been a much longer process. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I personally think it's a good thing.
Okay. Isabel.
Yeah.
Has lockdown been something that you see as ultimately will help redefine what Abbey Road is, or do you think it as an existential threat? Bearing in mind that you run a big, expensive, iconic studio.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's not an existential threat. I mean, it will be if we have to go into national closed doors lockdown again. But we have the benefit of being owned by Universal Music, which is the largest record label in the world. So we, as a studio, we're lucky in that we're not completely independent, because I know some of them are having a very tough time. But I think I'd echo what everyone has said. I think if we take the positive out of lockdown in terms of the studios and just in terms of the market environment. I mean, Roman said it, we've jumped. I think I was on a Wired call a few months ago. They reckon we've jumped 3 years in terms of digital behavior, whether it's e-commerce or fan engagement. And so we as an industry, broader than just Abbey Road, have to embrace that. And there's some really exciting technology out there. There's really exciting consumer trends that we have to kind of take hold of and let it become the new normal. I know we have polls running and everything, but what is the live stream here to stay? I mean, we as an incubator, we've been looking at all of the technology around that, and live streaming isn't new technology. It's just interesting how people are starting to glue that together. And from an artist perspective, when touring can start again, which we're all hopeful it will next year, can we use this to augment the live experience? It doesn't necessarily replace that feeling of the bass in your belly and standing next to your best friend, but can we use whether it's Roman's technology or something else to just augment what we have and kind of shift that fan experience a little bit? And I think that's you even look at who was it? Travis Scott on Fortnite. You know, it's this convergence of platforms where people are seeking new audience that is actually it's making us all a lot more creative about how we communicate with fans, how we communicate with consumers, how we interact with artists. Like if we look on the production side, you know, artists have been incredibly inventive in terms of what they've done in using production software, like kind of patching things together with Zoom, using existing production software, starting to use, we do a lot of, or we've incubated a number of businesses that use artificial intelligence to help with lyrics or to kind of augment the creative process. And because we haven't been together to create music necessarily over the past 6 months, people are turning to tech to try and just kind of, you know, superpower their creative process. So there's, you know, I could talk about this for hours, but I think there's real energy behind it. There's a real moment to capture this shift in behavior, and technology is what's kind of going to take it there. But I think we also need to be careful that we use it to augment what we all socially need, which is to be together again. And we are our best creative selves when we're together, whether you're building technology or you're creating a record. And so how do we kind of celebrate what is fabulous and beautiful about that, and then have technology augment it, enhance it, connect people better? I just think it's really, I'm very optimistic about where this is going to take us. Like, we live our mental health roller coaster, but you know, when we're out the other side of this, I think fundamentally we're going to be in a better place, because it's taken us back down to what do we, you know, what is the music that we love? Who are the artists that we want? And then how do I engage with that in new and different ways? So yeah, I think it's good times.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're running 2 polls. And the first set of results are in. So the question is, do you think virtual concerts can ever capture the experience of a live concert? 38% of people said yes, and 63% of people said no. That's just a quick straw poll around all 3 of us. Becca.
Darn, but you came to me first. Do you know what? I think this is quite raw for me. Having just come away from a lot of live concerts, and I don't think it can, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think we're going through a grieving mourning phase, but out of the other side comes life. So I think no, but I don't think that's a negative thing.
Roman, I'm going to come to you last, because I want you to I'm going to throw a couple of questions your way. Isabel, yes or no?
I think that human connection thing and that true fandom of I was there on that day when that happened, you can't replace that. But as I said earlier, I do think technology really augments it, and it shifts what we mean. We have a very linear view at the moment of what a live performance is. And I think you said in your preamble, Patrick, you know, it hasn't changed in a while, which isn't a bad thing, because we all love it, and you know, it's how we connect on a social and with the art level and with the artist. But I do think we're going to change what live means, and you know, Roman might be the next generation of it, but I think it all enhances that. How do I connect with music or an artist or a film experience? It's just some of the stuff that, you know, particularly in the field Roman is in, we're not familiar with it enough yet to know its full capability. So we've got to keep exploring.
Right. So Roman, I'm gonna re-ask the question. Do you think virtual concerts can ever capture the experience of a live concert?
I think, like, before I answer, can I slightly dismantle the question? First of all, so I think that what's interesting is when we don't actually really know what a virtual concert is like, and also to define what I think a virtual concert is you've attended a virtual concert when exactly that, the idea of this base, the elements that make up a real concert. A real concert, and I think what's important is because we're right at the beginning of this, we haven't evolved the language which defines these different things. You see virtual concerts happening all the time. You're actually just watching a stream. There's not really that much difference between watching Top of the Pops live in the 80s and watching someone playing guitar on YouTube. It isn't a virtual concert. A virtual concert, in terms of how I think what the technology is capable of doing, would be a concert where you can, first of all the audience can interact with each other, because it's not a concert if you're there and you can't talk to the person that's next to you. Second of all, it's happening live, and it isn't just a 2-dimensional video, because that is just you're staring at a video. There are things like volumetric capture. There's motion control. There's all these different things that can, I think, add up to something that would be a simulation of a concert. But it's a bit like asking, will music videos ever replace albums? They're completely different formats. I also don't think we know how to do virtual concerts. That's something that we've tried to do both as a band and as a company, is to try to say, well, what are the elements that make up the excitement of a concert? It is exactly, it's not just seeing person wander on stage and they play the song you like. It's the car journey as you're driving to the. It's like it's getting on the tube and seeing that you're wearing the same T-shirt as everyone else, and it's all these tiny little nuances, and they're connected to tribalism, and they're connected to emotional reactions and memories and scent, and all these different things add up to just great gig. And so saying that, so I would say the virtual will eventually capture the experience of a live concert, yes, but the experience of a live concert is an abstraction of it or not, is I think that's the question. Like, it's a new form.
Okay, so what role could virtual reality play in delivering a more engaging virtual experience?
I think that the things that we're missing in supposedly virtual concerts are that, I can't turn to my mate and go, oh my God, they're playing our song. I can't shout something on the set list. I'm not engaging in it in the same way. There's, two senses are telling me a concert's taking place. I'm seeing something and I'm hearing it. But
right,
like the feeling of bass, there's the scent of being out in a field. All these things are not there. So VR, or more generally, like spatial computing and XR and all the different things, which is a combination of just the idea that instead of watching something on a screen, you're in a space. I think that is the first step towards making these things more engaging.
Right. So this is a question to all of us. Should we be investing more resources into developing immersive technology for concerts and for studios? Should we be doing that?
I personally think it's going to organically happen. We haven't got any choice, really. Like, until you could, it was a bit like our experience of, we had people come to our events pre-COVID and they say, okay, I was transported to a different place. It was a new way of looking at music. It was a new way of experiencing concert. But then you obviously get people who go, yes, sorry, mate, I'm all about real music and real gigs, so I'm just going to go to, and so having that removed is interesting, because now we are saying, well, should we be investing in, I guess, is kind of as a medium, it's growing and it's expanding. Even, like we were saying, we've jumped 3 years in the space of 6 months. And I think that if not going to have another year, then technically by the time we come out, it will be 10 years ahead in terms of how familiar we are with it. So I think we're emotionally, we have no choice but to be invested in all these new things, because that's all we have.
I'm going to come at it with a bit more kind of business practical perspective. So with my incubator hat on, I think, the technology is still maturing, and I think it's going to redefine what these experiences are. I don't think we can parlay real world experience into virtual. I think they can be something on their own. But we've seen a lot of businesses, and in fact, over lockdown, there's a huge investment into Wave XR and other kind of virtual reality platforms that are seeking to do kind of some kind of performance live piece. The thing that's still holding up virtual and augmented reality is the consumer's access to headsets that allows you to experience it. So where it is gaining traction is actually people who are doing very experiential based stuff, where you can go somewhere to have this experience. And sadly, none of us can really go anywhere at the moment. But for you and I to strap our mobile phones to our heads feels quite alien still. So I think it's kind of, creatively, the opportunities are endless. The challenge is that the hardware isn't quite there yet, and the consumer adaptation of the technology isn't quite there yet. It'll come, but it's still early. So someone who wants to spend their life savings on it, I'd say be careful just yet. You need to make sure you're backing the right horse, and it's going to be a long journey.
I think it's also interesting to look at other mediums that came along. For instance, like in the early days of video games, no one had a console because they were too expensive to buy. They were arcades.
Yeah.
Went to a place.
And then the Game Boy came, right?
And then Game Boys came out. Suddenly is a mass consumer
Yeah.
And I think that we're definitely in that phase of it where logically people are like hungry for different experiences. The other thing is you can have a distanced VR experience, incredibly powerful and engaging, whereas a distanced live gig, I just feel is almost more dystopic to be going to a place that you knew would usually hold 500 people, and to be in a little sector. It's like the most Black Mirror thing you could possibly do. I think that, like, if you look how what happened with the video game market, and we don't even know how things, headsets could be like a pair of glasses. Well, God knows what Apple are going to launch in a couple of years, etc. I think that we're going back to something you said a lot at the very start. We're going to come out of this, and things will have been changed forever. You'll have a component of a concert that you would want to be able to stream to fans, where they can have an engaged experience. People who couldn't afford to go to the event, or the tickets were sold out. Now that we're used to the idea of it, I think that it's an idea that's going to stay.
And actually, there's a funny thing. I'd be interested in Becca's thoughts on this. When you think about live streaming or VR gigs, or probably more on the live streaming side, the interesting thing is the poor artist is just performing down the lens of a camera, right? They're getting like the beauty of that live show when you're the artist is you're getting your fan feedback. So, like, interestingly, we're seeing technologies that are trying to solve for the artist so that you can get some of that emotion. Otherwise, you're literally staring into the lens of a camera. So yeah,
Becca.
I think that's such an,
what's it been like for you?
Yeah, I think it's such an empathetic thing that you've just said, or everybody there, because I think a big thing that we're all discussing is actually the need to pivot, that we're not going to have something that simply replaces it. We're not going to ever go back, but that doesn't mean that we scrap it all, but we do have to pivot. And I think there is a real sense of mourning and grieving, but I think within the creative industries, we are having to think ahead and innovate where your normal human being who does not have to be in the music industry is able to hope for things to go back. But I think for us, we recognize that it's not going to do that. And I think a big thing for me in the past few months has been, had I not had strong relational currency with a friend who can put me in touch with a producer who I can Zoom with, or in label conversations where we trust person A, that person B is somebody to invest in. I think without those strong lines of relational currency, I think it all becomes very difficult. And so I think when it comes to investing, do we need to invest in these things? I think, yes, absolutely we do. And there is a sense for me as an artist in mourning not being able to be in front of people. But I think also for me, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'd love to create live experiences that are immersive in a more intimate way, because people being with people, even if it's just 10, we all have that moment that we will never forget. I think, around connecting with fans and connecting with people, this entire campaign for me has been online. There has been nobody that I've met, bar my mum, who's excited. There's been no other normal person who I have met that is a fan of the music. There's been anticipation because of the other songs, but that's all been online. And so I think now more than ever, it's important to be able to hone in, how do I be my normal, authentic self with people online, in order to form those relationships, in order to get that energy back when I'm doing a bit of a live stream, knowing that, these 10 people who I now know in a better way because I have Instagram messaged them as a fan, whereas maybe I wouldn't have done that before. I know they're going to be there for the live, and that can be energizing for me.
Let me ask you a question. Outside of the industry, you call it a stream. So you don't call it a performance, you call it a live stream. When you sing live, or you do a live performance, is it the same as you doing a gig and being on stage? Just put us in the room of what it feels like for you as the artist.
I think at the moment I'm thinking in a twofold way. There's a live performance which could be filmed and put out there, which might feel like something just very performative where I'm not expecting anything back. Let's say it's a YouTube session, something beautiful that people can consume, or a live stream. But I think I'm yet to feel that it would be a live gig. Having said that, I think if there were even a few of the components that both Isabel and Roman have said, where you could get you could hear back from people whilst the show's going on, or while the stream's going on, should I say. Or perhaps, I think that basically if there was an element of interaction, then perhaps it would feel like a show. But I think nothing at the moment feels like it replaces even just having 10 people in a room. That feels, for me, would feel like a show. However, I think the power of the stream is still knowing that it's happening live, knowing that people have set aside time. Maybe they've got a little glass of wine and they've come to watch. You know, stream it's not a negative term. It's
right.
just it's a pivoted term, which
right.
is still something I would anticipate and feel nervous about. Over the last few weeks, I've been doing some Instagram lives called a cuppa and a natter, which is just where I have a cup of tea and a natter around this topic of the song I'll Be There, which is the name of the song that I brought out, which was written about mental health. And it's been really powerful to feel the nervous energy that I feel when I'm about to press that go live button, because I know people are consuming it. And so I think because there's that interaction there, there's another person on the other end of it that has been charged for me way more than it would have been in January, which
right.
I think goes to show just how quickly we do pivot and we evolve. Like you said, we've jumped 3 years. It really does feel like that from an artist's perspective.
And does that, just quickly on that, does that mean that social media is playing a more important part in your life, not just as an artist, but your entire life?
Absolutely. I think as an artist, without the social media, there would have been very little campaign to this entire thing. Without people being able to message and say, this song really moved me, or send me a video of them dancing to it, there would have been very little buzz for me. So I think social media actually, ironically, has become integral. However, I think also, as we've spoken about a little bit, that mental health check that we all have to have with ourselves is also so intrinsically linked with our use of social media. So I think for me, being able to use it in a much more direct, specific, building a brand, speaking about the music way, as opposed to just, this is my life, this is the cheese I had this morning. I think having that differentiation has been really important, because it allows me to have those boundaries around using social media to the end that, you know, I need to use it for, as opposed to it being something all consuming, which I think at the moment, with the little people interaction we have and the huge social media interaction we can have, is really important.
Fantastic. So one of the threads that has weaved its way through is this sense of prevailing wider forces, the economic forces, the technological forces, but we're in the music business. MOBO is a big award show. We were due to be at Wembley on the 12th of November, 10,000 people screaming, and all of that's driven by sales, brands, record labels. Is the music business at the cusp of an incredible shift, or are we partway through? Where are we in the life cycle? Because many people say that, look, streams mean that we no longer need to have streams, social media, the ability to have kind of amazing technology in our bedrooms kind of does away with the need for big record labels, does away with the need for big studios. Isabel, what do you think? Is the music business changing forever?
I'm loath to kind of over dramatize it. I think the music industry has had to react to a lot in the last 10-15 years. You know, it was the first hit with huge digital change, and is kind of out the other side now and really embraces change. So I actually think, ironically, because of the change the industry's been through, it's kind of best equipped to deal with all of this pivoting that needs to happen in the next however many years. We're kind of used to adopting to a changing environment. So, you know, live is disrupted right now, but it will probably come back to the way we know it, but then augmented with all of this technology that we've just spoken about. You know, the way we make music might change. You know, I fundamentally believe on a human level, we're all going to be a little more reticent to get on a plane. You know, so if you want to collaborate with a producer in LA, do you really need to go there? Can you do, you know, stuff virtually? So I think the way we make music, the way we perform, and then how we kind of distribute it to fans and get it out to fans, we use social media. But I don't know, I fundamentally believe for Becca to be the next Lady Gaga, which I'm sure she will be, you need a machine behind you. That doesn't happen from someone being able to manage Instagram really well. Like that is, you talked about your social kind of, and I mean a people network. So you need that network of people that are, in your corner, in every corner of the world, to become, a megastar. It allows us all, technology will now allow us all to be creators, all to distribute our own music. But I still believe if you want to, be at the top of this game, we still need the industry as we know it, with the caveat that we need to pivot and move with the times. But I think we're actually an industry that's very used to that now because of our kind of that abrupt moment in history where Napster, really changed the world, the music industry. Yeah.
So Roman, what part does big business play in your ability to develop innovative ways to create experiences? I mean, it's when you were describing being at the gig wearing a headset, it kind of felt like I was in Tenet or any one of the Christopher Nolan films. It sounds expensive.
Right. Well, to answer the question about how much we rely on it, I think that the music industry was always a tool for artists to express exciting and engaging things, songs, album covers, videos. And as we've talked about, the music industry, the things it relied on have shifted, like physical releasing, the idea of that you could just print a piece of plastic and people would go and buy that piece of plastic for an amazing amount of money has completely gone away. So the way that we are consuming it and the way that artists are able to monetize what they're doing is completely shifted. But it definitely doesn't mean that there are no more exciting ideas or there's no more ways to do it. And I think that this will be something that kind of might upset a lot of music industry, or maybe old school music industry people, is that what is, when we refer to the music industry, what are we actually talking about? Like, it used to be sort of a glamorized thing where it was sort of basically a bank that you could go to and they'd be like, we're going to make you a star. And now the music industry is, in some ways, it's another tech company. Like, you go to a modern day label, and a great label today is a label that making sure that there's streams, so making sure that the music's out there, making sure that there's a fantastic digital campaign, making sure that the assets, that's what labels and the music industry have become. And there's always going to be these people who are in power, let's say, before, and there's always going to be amazing brands that people always want to be part of, whether it's Def Jam or whether it's Abbey Road or whether it's Warp, and those will continue to be brands, let's say, that you can rely on. And it will attract the best people, and it will attract the best artists, and therefore the artists will be able to work with the best people and presumably get their message out in the way that they want to. So in terms of what we're building alongside it, and the important thing to say is we're an anomaly in the tech industry. We were a band that were trying to find new ways of touring in the cheapest possible way. By the way, this isn't like tour bus arrives, a private jet, and we go into a place where everything's working. The earliest shows were literally held together with gaffer tape, and we were free in a sense to explore these different things, rather than being like a tech company who has to get funding together, has to get investors, you need to get this many users on board, you have to do it. We were a group trying to express something or trying to build an incredible show. And even when in the very early days, like to give credit to Abbey Road Red, we went and saw Karim there, and we were not treated like a tech company and not treated like a band that had this weird idea. Everyone, I think, is understanding that there's everything to pay for right at the beginning of it, and no one has the answers. It's a bit like the synthesizer's been invented and Kraftwerk are about to come along, but at the moment there is no one has managed to use these in a creative and exciting way, especially because of using Kraftwerk as an analogy. That was using complicated machinery and using its limitations in an interesting way. It wasn't, those things were hard to use, and they were complex, and they had to reinvent what music sounded like to fit that in. A bit like with rave culture, is that whole, well, what came first, the rave or the person making house music? You know, the context is everything. So that's where we're at now, I think.
Interesting. So just, can we each give one piece of advice to the person that's to the left of us? So what one piece of advice, bearing in mind your superpower. So Roman, clearly we know what your superpower is in this context. Becca, we know what yours is. So Roman, you're both tech and you're both an artist. So you can share two pieces. Beck, as an artist, piece of advice for Isabel and Abbey Road, and Isabel, a piece of advice for Rebecca and for Roman. And, it could be some wisdom based on your expertise. Isabel, you look like you're ready to go first.
Like, who's gonna go first?
Give me advice.
I don't know.
Advice or thought, advice, insight, something that you're seeing.
I don't know. I'm not exactly a wise old owl. I'm old. I'm just not an owl. But I don't know. To Roman, I would say, because this is the technology is hugely powerful and really exciting, but seeing is believing. So it's actually about getting, which I know you're doing already, Roman, but it's about getting people in front of the experience, because on a dry PowerPoint and the tech,
Absolutely.
everyone knows, or not everyone knows what it is, but you can you can have that Silicon Valley pitch and it's lovely, but actually seeing it, understanding how it's shifting the paradigm of live is really the exciting piece, and it could be whatever you want to be. So that's what I'd say to Roman. And then Becca, I have nothing other than keep doing what you're doing, because you're obviously doing an amazing job. And when you need a recording studio to come to, give me a call.
I'll call you straight after this.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Becca, I've got about 2 minutes left. So.
Okay, I think one of the most powerful things at the moment is relational currency. It's the fact that the pretense of our entire industry has been diffused in so many ways, and that the four of us can be having a conversation, which would have been rare in January. So I think facilitating more lines for normal connection. And as you said, Isabel, I think you're so right. We cannot replace people to people. When things were lifted, families, everybody's running at each other because we all miss human connection. But I think facilitating those lines for people to build those connections and have that trust, and then be able to spark and innovate from there, like you already do with Abbey Road, putting people in the right room together to spark and fuse. I just think facilitating more lines for that is the greatest power, I think, for artists at the moment, which you know already, so I didn't need to say. That's all I've got.
Well, I don't really feel like I could give you any advice either. First of all, congratulations on the single. That would be the first thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'd say that this is kind of to both of you, really, we're in response to the previous sort of comment, which was, I completely agree that it's going to be about bringing it in front of people, and the whole seeing is believing thing, I think, is why a band and an artist or a music and a person standing on stage is still the most visceral, powerful thing you could ever do. And if it's based around that, I think you can't really go that far wrong, as long as you remember what was great about standing in front of a singer and a drum kit and a bassist. And then I'd also finish on the fact that if we are at the cusp of this huge shift and this revolutionary moment, I don't think the answers are going to come from Silicon Valley and from a tech company with a nice PDF. I think it's going to come from artists, and artists have always pushed it forward more and quicker because we have only one motivation, and that's to create something incredible.
Agreed.
Preach.
I think it's incredibly, you said preach it, Roman. I think that's an incredibly powerful and poetic way to end the conversation. So Isabel Garvey, MD at Abbey Road Studios, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Roman Rapek, who's the founder of Overview Arc, thank you very much. And Becca, incredible artist, thank you. So if we can, let's just play out with a little bit of Becca's first and next single. All right, thanks, guys.
Yay.
Be there when you're faded. left you naked. You know that I'll be there. I'll be there.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. What an amazing, informative, inspiring session. I feel like I've learned so much, not just in this amazing session, but throughout the day. And I think there's a very clear message coming through, is that artists, being artists, will use their incredible creativity to find a way forward, to help us connect, to help us find meaning, of course, in these difficult times. Thank you so much for joining us. Do, as always, check in the expo, and do try and connect with each other. I think Becca made a really good point, that it's about our connections and our capital, and the relationships that we build up with people that we're going to get through these isolated times. So there is a new networking tool on the CogX platform. Check in, see who else is there, and see if you can spark up a conversation, and you never know where it might go. We are going to take a very short break, but we'll be back here at noon, and we're going to be talking about leadership, creativity, and the Logitech story with the CEO of Logitech, Bracken Darrell, and the amazing designer, Inni Archibong. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very shortly.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.